Hello again, my name is Hannah and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to do our second monthly wrap up and I'm really excited about this one because I actually went above and beyond with the amount of books I was going to read, so we have tons of fun stuff to yap about. I have a coffee here and I hope that you have a fun beverage too as we sit back, relax, and discuss the highs and lows of this month's reading. Okay, so I actually read 8 books this month. That's partially due to a 24-hour reading challenge that I completed, which I also filmed. So if you have not seen that, that was pretty fun. I had a lot of fun putting that together, so you should go check that out. But from that, I read 4 books, starting off with a very interesting read. That was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Now, to be completely honest, I already had criticisms about this book before going into it, and I honestly read it mostly because I realized if I'm going to criticize a novel that I do know a lot about, I should actually take the time to read it to ensure that my opinions are valid to express. And unfortunately, it was exactly as I expected. I even tried to help myself by going into it thinking about it as a book about DV, not romance, and I thought maybe with that preface I would have a better time. But even within that endeavor, I think it failed. I actually gave this 1 star because I think the mission it set out to do, it actually did the opposite, and in my opinion, it did a disservice to the topic it was trying to raise awareness about. I think it was just handled in a really weird, almost disrespectful way where even though we're in the victim's point of view, I just honestly think it did this topic a disservice, and the only relief I have from it is now I could specifically point out things wrong with it, not just in general from what I've heard. So honestly, yeah. Next though, we moved on to Better, Brighter Things, and we started the long-awaited Throne of Glass reread with actually a new read, and that was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. Yeah, when I read the series for the first time, I didn't read this one. I know. I was missing out. I realize that now because it literally made me cry. I gave it 5 stars. If you don't know, Throne of Glass is a widely popular series by Sarah J. Maas. It takes place in a fantasy world about a woman who is rescued from a labor camp and sent to compete in a king's competition to become basically his personal assassin. And as she goes through these trials, the competitors start to die mysteriously, and the longer the books go on, the more this world expands into an adventure that changes their entire world. This one is a little bit different because it's actually a set of novellas that take place in the main character's past before she ends up in the labor camp. So that's a little bit interesting. You know where she's going to end up. So reading this, you're kind of just seeing how that happened. I loved this one so much, mostly because it didn't feel like a waste of time. Every short story reinforced something that I already knew about the character and loved, or it introduced characters that actually, with the first time I read it, I was really confused why they were bringing it up in a way that they were already at least familiar. And it makes sense because they were in this one. So shocker, Hannah, you should have read the whole thing. But I did now. I understand it. Funny enough, with this one, about a year ago, I had seen some fan art about like the saddest scene in this book. And I was a little scared because I was in the middle of the Throne of Glass series. So I thought that was coming up. Then I finished the whole thing and realized, oh, that event never happened. I literally sent my friend a Snapchat that said I got to the part that the fan art was based off of, and it's just me crying. Because, yeah, it was emotional, it was informative, it was exciting, and it was just some of Sarah J. Maas, her greatness. I loved it. I won't spend too much time on these next 2 actually, because that was Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight. I actually found this copy of like the newer covers in a free little library, and that was really exciting. This one I gave 5 stars. It was just a really great start to a series. I felt like it was intriguing, not too overwhelming as they were building the fantasy world. I think I read it in like 2 days or something. Even though I had read it before, I couldn't put it down. This one I gave like 4.75 stars. The only reason it lost that little bit of a star that kept it from basically perfect is because I felt like after a really pivotal part happens in this book, something changes as it basically makes the character snap and it really pushes them into like the next phase of the adventure of this series. I feel like we had this crazy intense thing happen and then super dead. And I understand that books, it's a good idea when you're doing a lot of fast-paced stuff to basically give the readers a breather, but I felt like this one just lasted a little too long, especially because I knew what was coming. I was like, all right, I want to get to that part. So in that way, I almost got bored right after. And instead of making me feel rested, I felt restless. So still a wonderful, wonderful read. I honestly forgot how creepy this one gets at some parts. Her descriptions are so vivid that I was literally like creeping myself out before going to bed. And again, I've read this before, so the magic was not lost a second time. Now we get into the books that I read for my 24-hour reading challenge. I talked a little bit about them throughout the video, but I wanted to save my more in-depth reviews for this one because it just felt like a better time and place to do it. So let's get into the first one. That was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. In this one, it's a fun rom-com where we're following Aiden and Lucy. Aiden hosts a radio show basically about giving love advice called Heartstrings. And one night, Lucy's daughter calls into the radio show on behalf of her mother, basically asking for advice on how Aiden thinks they could find her someone really lovely for her to date because she thinks her mom is lonely. Well, Lucy, at the beginning of the book, she hears her daughter on the phone and kind of rushes in and is like, who are you on the phone with? It's like 11 o'clock at night, picks it up, and then actually finishes the call on Heartstrings, where she basically admits that what she wants is the magic of like true love, and she's just been hurt by unreciprocated effort in the past. So then this call goes viral for the radio show, and she's kind of thrust into this bachelorette type situation where on the show with Aiden, he's basically vetting dates for her and trying to set her up with this true love. Well, as you can expect, as it goes on, Aiden doesn't really like setting her up with other guys because he wants to be the one that is going on the date with her. He's starting to fall for her. That was really cute. The whole premise of the radio show and that being the event to pull them together, it was fun. It's dual POV, which I love. My own book I'm writing is dual POV, but I still gave this one 3.75 stars. And that's mostly because the characters felt pretty inconsistent when you really got into the book. It started off really fun and you were just kind of there for the plot, but as it went into their arcs, it was just more unbelievable, I guess, for them. Aiden would do things that honestly just felt like a jerk move towards Lucy, towards the people in his life, where it's like, okay, there's like bristly and the grumpy, and then there's mean. And I felt like Aiden turned more towards the mean part than anything else. And Lucy, her inner dialogue and actions don't match. And in a way that's not like, oh, you're struggling. It's like, no, it doesn't match. It was just kind of confusing, honestly. I will say I really liked the third act wrap up. I thought it was creative and it was satisfying without being predictable. It was really cute. I was giggling. Yeah, it was just a lot of back and forth that it wasn't my favorite B.K. Borison. That gem still lies with Lovelight Farms. That's why I gave this one 3.75 stars. Next though, we moved on to probably a new favorite book of mine, and that was The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. When I went into this, all I knew really was that it was Criminal Minds, but teenagers. And I was blown away from that. This was a super fun YA mystery about a 17-year-old girl, Cassie Hobbs, who was actually recruited by the FBI because of her natural talent for profiling people. That interest comes from her mother, who was either a psychic or just practiced that profession, something that she really learned human behavior. But her mom was presumed dead, and Cassie never knew what happened to her. So when she gets recruited by the FBI, I was expecting her to kind of start like on her own, deciding to investigate what happened to her mom. But actually that came to her because while she's with the FBI, a serial killer at the same time starts basically getting closer and closer to her, and you realize things are actually a part of a bigger web than you realize. This one just had all of the ingredients of a wonderful YA. It was easy dialogue. exciting plot. There's a little bit of romance that was just fun, and even though there's not much to it, but it was really fun. The characters were super diverse and like individual, that even though there were sometimes 5 people in a scene talking at the same time, I knew exactly which dialogue belonged to which person. And it wasn't like it was heavy with jargon or anything like that. She just did a good job of introducing the characters and then letting them stand on their own. And it was just really easy to follow along with. So I know in the challenge, I read this one in, I think, like 2 hours and 48 minutes. Probably the fastest I've ever read a book. But that's just because I picked it up and I did not want to put it down. So I highly, highly, highly recommend, if you have not read this yet, if you're late to the game like I am, welcome. I'm glad you're reading it. I am really excited to get the next books. So since The Naturals just reignited my love of mysteries, we stayed with that theme, and next I read The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. This one I gave 4 stars, and that was because, similar to First Time Caller, the characters were just a little bit outside of my taste, I guess, that they made decisions in the end that I honestly felt were pretty cruel. This is the story about 18-year-old Belle, who has always lived in the shadow of the mystery surrounding her mom, who went missing when she left 2-year-old Belle in the car. Again, similar actually to The Naturals, Rachel was presumed dead, but when Belle is 18, they start filming a documentary about the disappearance of her mom, Rachel Price, and while that's going on, her mom reappears, and suddenly everyone's wondering, where has she been? Is she telling the truth? And things start to not really match up in a way that causes Belle to investigate who this person is in her house, because she just starts to wonder what's been going on for the past 16 years. And true to a Holly Jackson mystery, this one was so well done, so neatly wrapped up, that it was just really satisfying to read. At the end, I could not put it down, and she left nothing alone. Everything had a purpose, which I love. The thing is though, again, similar to First Time Caller, Belle sometimes did things and I was like, girl, chill. They're just say a polite hello, and she'll just like snap at them in a way that I'm like, you're just kind of mean. I understand that she's been through a lot, and I'm like, and you're going through a lot, but there was just a lack of decency that made it hard to root for her sometimes. I wasn't a huge fan of the wrap up, so that's why I gave it 4 stars. Then finally, we ended the challenge and the month's reads with Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. Sarah Adams is actually an automatic buy author for me. I've loved all of her stuff since I read the cheat sheet in one sitting on a road trip. I gave it like 5, 6 stars basically. Oh, I didn't realize that was, I realized that was a piece of my hair. This one follows Emily Walker. She's the sister of Noah and Annie, who we follow in the first 2 books in this interconnected standalone universe. But we're still in Rome, Kentucky. Emily is a 2nd grade teacher, and in this book, she ends up being neighbors with her basically like academic and professional rival, Jack. And you learn that Jack is also a secret writer, writing under a pseudonym for his personal reasons. And you get this enemies to lovers dynamic where they're bantering with one another and they're constantly competing, and they're starting to realize, wait, why do I need this person's validation? What does this actually mean? And so that was a lot of fun. You get to see, I think she did a really good job breaking down switching from enemies to in love, because that's honestly sometimes my issue with that trope, is it just feels like you go from hate to love and it doesn't actually make sense why you would want to be together. It usually ends up being toxic in my opinion. But this one, I felt like she gave real reasons. It made sense. It was gradual enough that it was like kind of holding the reader's hand as we made the switch. And it was really, really cute. I loved their personalities. I still relate to Annie from Practice Makes Perfect the most. She and I feel like, are basically the same person. But this one, with their writing careers and their writing endeavors, that really hit home for me. I almost cried at one point because of something kind that he does for her, and it was almost like spoke to my love language, where it was just, I understood why it meant so much, and Emily was realizing why it meant so much, so it was just this like really fun moment. When I read the back, it mentions that what brings them together is she accidentally sends her unfinished manuscript, romance manuscript, to the principal of her elementary school, and she asks Jack to help her steal it back. And honestly, when I read that, I thought it was going to be a bigger part of the story, but it's really the event that just brings them together. So there was a little part of me that felt like it was almost misled with what this book was actually about. You really just have to love the entire cast of characters. The scenes that don't really have to do with them getting together, you're still enjoying seeing like her with her sisters and her friend and just being with the cast of people in the town. It's basically if you just wanted a front row seat to Stars Hollow in real life. That's what this feels like. So if you go in with that, then the pace is really fun. I didn't really realize it was going to be that, so at times it felt a little slow and a little distracted. Totally not bad though. I gave this one 4 stars as well. Okay, so that was all of the books I read in February. If you've read any of these, let me know below and let's kind of discuss. I would love to hear your thoughts and what you rated them, and we can just continue this conversation in the comments if you've read any of them. If you wanted to read any of them, what was your favorite book that you read in February? I'd love to know that too. I'm always adding to my recommendations. But no matter what, thank you so much for spending this part of your day with me. I had a lot of fun and I'm excited for the next month of books and the next time we sit down for a monthly wrap up.